Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. Right, today we're gonna have a very controversial video. Now, some days ago, I think over a week ago, I actually posted a poll in my community section, and I did it for a reason. And the poll was basically people choosing in between Hercules and Cosmic Ghost Rider. And we can see that 61% went with Cosmic Ghost Rider, and there was not a small amount of people who actually voted there. It's 7,500 votes that were cast for this. So that is a very significant amount. So it's thousands and thousands of people preferring Cosmic Ghost Rider or Hercules. And on the surface side, the champions are relatively similar, as in, like, both of them are cosmic champions that have access to a bunch of buffs and a ton of damage output. Both of them bypass miss and have some extremely shiny numbers and stuff like that. But in reality, once you actually start using the champions, you realize how vastly different they are. And whilst obviously there will be aspects where one champion is better than another, and vice versa, overall opinion of the champion's worth is also quite important. And in this case, I'm actually gonna be siding with the minority, with the 39% of the people. And I was thinking quite long and hard how to make this video, and I think I found a format that will let me explain how I arrived to my conclusions. Now, I'm always very cautious when a new champion gets released, especially if a new champion is super hyped, because more often than not, that hype is unwarranted, it's undeserved. Therefore, I always encourage everybody to think for themselves. Do not believe what I say, do not believe what anybody else say. Draw your own conclusions, take in information at your own time, to your own abilities. Ideally, have a chance to use that champion, absorb as much opinions as you can, and then figure out what's best for you and what's more needed for you. And even though I will heavily imply that I personally believe that Hercules is the better of the two cosmic champions, it by no means will try to say that he's better for everything. There will inevitably be things that CGR is going to be better than Hercules. But again, I do think that where it matters, Hercules will end up being the one that brings more to your account. One of the things that I have always said about CGR is, since I have started using him, and I do have a rank 5 5-star Sig 200, and I do have a rank 3 6-star CGR, and since I actually got those champions and since I ranked them up, I didn't actually use them for much of the heavy, hard content, like in 7.3 and stuff. And even when I try to make showcase videos, like if I bring in CGR in Act 6.3, you can do that test yourself. Take CGR, go to 6.35, and see how many of those paths would you want to use CGR. And that has always kind of been the biggest problem with the champion, that outside of fairly specific matchups, he really isn't a champion that will enable you to do any significant piece of content that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do. He's a champion that makes that content faster, sometimes easier, definitely more fun, but he doesn't let you do more pieces of content or to do it, I don't know, saving tons of resources in some really tricky fights. He largely takes the same fights Iron Patriot could take, or, I don't know, Gamora or something. Basically the fights that are relatively vanilla. And Hercules doesn't. Hercules can actually make your life better. And in order to compare these champions, well, we're going to start with the pros of CGR. So his first obvious pro is that he has bleed and incinerate immunity. Having immunity is extremely valuable in this game, especially bleed immunity, because it's like one of the liquid courage double edge setup immunities. Therefore, it automatically makes him more compatible with liquid courage double edge setups. And obviously, incinerate immunity is becoming increasingly more in demand, with more champions and nodes inflicting incinerate. Now, let's move on to the next pro. So he has armor breaks, and that also makes him synergize extremely well with Despair. The problem with Despair compatibility is that CGR does so much damage that in the vast majority of the fights, likely with pretty much the exception of Labyrinth of Legends and Abyss of Legends, that despair compatibility doesn't really matter. You're going to out-damage almost all the existing heal in the game. And the armor breaks themselves, having access to armor breaks undeniably is a piece of utility. However, being overly reliant on that access to armor breaks quite often can work as a con as well. I listed here in the pros, but it's one of those situations where a pro can easily turn into a con as soon as you are up against a champion that's immune to armor break, or champions that shrug off debuffs or punish you for placing debuffs. There are more than plenty instances where it can also work in your disadvantage. So in reality, it's neither here or there, as far as I'm concerned. Yes, it will allow you to do some fights that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do, but as well it will hinder you in some fights where you otherwise would not have problems. And perhaps most importantly, a lot of his damage output relies on armor break. And as soon as that is not available, he's extremely burdened. And unfortunately with Cosmic Ghost Rider, a similar situation is to his access to buffs. Now, his access to buffs in general normally gets listed as a pro. And so it should. You can do buffed up lanes, there are specific cosmic nodes that you are able to do and stuff like that. But at the same time, there are nodes like Spite, there are nodes like Power Snack, Buffet, and a bunch of others that hinder you and punish you for getting these buffs. And in Cosmic Ghost Rider case, it's again the situation where you're quite reliant on having access to those buffs. As in, like, if your power gain gets nullified, your rotation inevitably immediately suffers. If your cruelties, precisions, and furies get nullified, your rotation suffers to a point where Cosmic Ghost Rider is borderline shadow of himself. Now, the next point, you have nullify and power lock, pending whether your Cosmic Ghost Rider is duped, and that is a very useful piece of utility. That is arguably my favorite part, alongside that potent power gain buff about Cosmic Ghost Rider. He's a Cosmic Champion that can nullify all the buffs in one go and does it fairly potent and does it frequently. Now, he's not better Nullify Champion than top Mystic Champions, and in most of the cases where you need specifically the ability to nullify buffs, you're still not going to bring in Cosmic Ghost Rider, but that actually lets him do some fights that other champions wouldn't or couldn't, and I like that. That is definitely a huge pro for Cosmic Ghost Rider. Now, the fact that you power lock the opponent for X amount of time, I don't really consider it as a proper form of power control, because you have no way of reducing opponent's power and just kind of procrastinating the inevitable, or it's a way how you can be more aggressive than you otherwise would be able to be. But when he's duped, that ability to nullify can definitely come in handy in multi different situations, and I like that. That is a legitimate great piece of utility that he as a Cosmic Champion has. Now, I already mentioned buffs, but specifically wanted to point out that potent power gain buff. He has one of the best power gain buffs that he can access very quickly, and that can enable him to have access to a special attack very, very early. Effectively, finishing one combo lets you get to level 1, and finishing 2 combos, you can pretty much get to your level 2 no problems. And that is also something that is very worth mentioning, especially when you're dealing with nodes like Power Shield and stuff like that. So that is a very good ability to have. I think power gain in general, power gain on demand and in your control, is extremely underrated ability in the game, especially for specific situations like Power Shield, or well, there are plenty of nodes who help you with that. And then he has bypass miss ability, which is, you know, neat, but he really isn't also the champion. If you're going to be dealing with a heavy miss mechanics, he typically don't bring in Cosmic Ghost Rider, even though you can. So that is a valuable piece of utility. And I'm sure you can find some more things to praise about Cosmic Ghost Rider, and that's fine. But I'm going to pull out some of the Hercules pros here. And we're going to have bypass miss and auto block. So that is actually obviously more beneficial, more significantly better, that you also can bypass auto block, because that is increasingly common ability. Then he's effectively stun immune, which again is a little bit more niche scenario, but is definitely a huge pro to the champion and gives him another level of utility. then he has the same thing as Cosmic Ghost Rider, access to buffs. Except this time, I haven't listed it as a con as much, because his damage output depends significantly less on whether you have the buffs active or not. In many fights, you don't even get to kind of like do your full rotation where you get your precisions up or cruelties up, and you're perfectly fine finishing out the fights without having any buffs, or without ever having the need for any of your buffs to be triggered or be afraid that they are nullified, with the exception of Immortality, obviously, but we're gonna get to that. But yeah, so that is the thing where I definitely already immediately prefer Hercules a lot more. It has been actually very important quite recently in Alliance Quest, where yes, if you have to, you can easily get your 3 buffs for buffed up, you can get your buffs for different nodes, but at the same time, you by no means feel significantly held back if you don't have access to those buffs. And that I prefer Hercules a lot more. Now the next big thing is the Infuriate mechanic. The Infuriate mechanic is actually huge. Infuriate mechanic is one of the best things about Hercules. It gives you immediate immense control of the fight. It lets the fight be more aggressive, be more fluid, be less frustrating. And it also, kind of interestingly enough, lets you escape a lot of dangerous situations. Because in many of our fights, especially when, the fight starts not going our way, how we get caught is baiting out opponent's special attack. Our opponent is passive and we need to start dancing about. Infuriate lets us avoid that. And especially in case of Hercules, it flows perfectly with his kit on allowing him to get in easy intercepts, easy special intercepts. And obviously then also Infuriate can be easily used, same as Taunt, bypass all or nothing, and plenty of other things. It can also be, to a degree, kind of used to mitigate the burden in power gain heavy matchups, to even a better extent often than Cosmic Ghost Rider's Power Lock, because Power Lock is going to be there for 5 seconds, and if nothing happens, then opponent keeps on gaining power. In case of Infuriate, you actually get to empty the opponent's special bar. That is, if you get to survive that special attack, obviously, but with Immortality, I think it kind of combines a very, very good base and alternate way how to control the opponent's power meter. Because with his Immortality, if need be, you can just eat that special attack, and yes, it's going to take you down to 1 HP, but you can survive and can be able to win that fight. So I do value Infuriate immensely high, to a point that I think that my opinion would be significantly different if that ability wouldn't be there. I do personally consider Infuriate to be arguably the best addition to MCOC any champion kit in 2021. Absolutely love it. Wish many more champions would have it. Then we need to talk about his Immortality. Now, his Immortality is very potent. It has a very significant downside, because that is the buff that has to go through. If you're fighting against, I don't know, either whether it be Fisticuffs or whether it be any other Fate Seal node or something, then you're kind of screwed. Obviously, that goes immediately out of the window because it's an active buff. It can easily be nullified. Same as if you're fighting against any Mystic champions, you need to be careful, because like Sorcerer Supreme or Dr. Doom has their Nullify auras. It's very easy to get nullified by them, or like Black Widow Clairvoyant. And then on top of all of that, there's still the common enemies of Buffet, Power Snack, and stuff like that. And yeah, the fact that it is an actual buff is definitely the worst part of that Immortality. Now, the way Immortality functions is, again, it's different, let's say, from Corvus, whose Immortality I personally probably consider to be slightly more potent. This Immortality is more forgiving to mistakes, but it also rushes you into being more offensive and thus committing more mistakes at the same time. And well, we can say it functions differently. Overall, I think I do prefer Corvus Glaive's Immortality, because it's passive, because it doesn't put a time restraint on you. If you need to spend next 5 minutes hitting opponent's block, you may do so. I have finished dozens or hundreds of fights like that. It's not the most convenient way, and with Hercules, obviously, you go unblockable, and it's very easy to be super aggressive, but it has an expiration date, where eventually you do have to bait out opponent's special attack or sit through their special animation, and which frequently has that Immortality expire. Now, in a timed content, it is arguably better, like in Alliance Quest. Because in Alliance Quest, if your Immortality is about to expire, you can just pause it, wait out the fight, go back in again. But in any quest where timer isn't a thing, you can't do that. So it has its pros and cons, but it's definitely very, very, very potent ability that, together with Infuriate, definitely elevates the character to a very high position in the Cosmic class and potentially in the game in general. Another thing that I really like with Hercules is how he's compatible with Liquid Courage and Double Edge. That even if you enter the fight with 1% HP, Liquid Courage and Double Edge, even at the beginning of the fight, does not deal you any damage, even if you're not running Coagulate Mastery. You're slightly, ever so slightly, recovering. Now, you can't count his resistances to bleed and poison as full-on immunities, like you could with Omega Red, for instance, because they're nowhere near potent enough. But at the same time, they're significant enough to make it in the list of pros. But looking at these kind of abilities, you can even see that CGR arguably has more pros than Hercules has here. And again, I'm skipping several sets of pros for both champions. Like CGR obviously is not reliant on any sort of ramp up, and Hercules is. But again, Hercules has much better starting damage on his base if he is even remotely ramped up, and so on and so forth. You can debate back and forth. But here is the big difference. When we're going to go to champion cons, there are, again, more that you can list in any of the champions. But the deal breakers, arguably deal breakers, that stop me from loving, enjoying, valuing, rating Cosmic Ghost Rider as much as many other people do, are these 4 specific points. Now, I do enjoy Cosmic Ghost Rider, but I don't think he is nowhere near as valuable champion as like Nick Fury, Dr. Doom, or even Hercules. And this is why. He's reliant on 5-hit combos. If you can't finish your 5-hitters, you can't access your power gain, and your power loop is significantly slower. Now, you can have mangled fights somehow with like 2-3 hit combos, and you can still eventually access your 5 judgments and things like that, but not meant to be played like that, and it again makes him a shadow of his actual self. As soon as there is like a mixed master, as soon as there is like nodes of similar nature, or as soon as you go up against opponents that have a chance to evade, that is a significant problem to deal with. And that alone might not be the deal breaker, but it is, again, a significant minus to take a look at. Then the second thing is that Cosmic Ghost Rider is super reliant on special attacks. Can't use special attacks, you're busted. And what's worse is, you need to have access to your specific special attacks at the times when you need it, once you need it. So it means that there is very difficult time for him to deal with any nodes that manipulate power. Now, it's not always impossible, but plenty of times it will be. It will be borderline unplayable if you can't access power freely. Again, your entire fight maybe not necessarily get completely thrown away and scrapped, but you're not playing the Cosmic Ghost Rider that you want to play. Playing a nerfed version, basically, of Cosmic Ghost Rider at that point. And then the 2 points they already mentioned. He does not only has the ability to access these debuffs in forms of armor break, he's very heavily reliant on it. And we have many more champions who cleanse the debuffs, who purify the debuffs, who convert the debuffs, so on and so forth. And that is, once again, a very big problem. If you can't stick plenty of debuffs, plenty of armor breaks on an opponent, your damage output suffers significantly, and there is no real good reason to use Cosmic Ghost Rider. And the same goes for his buffs. If you can't land his power gain, if you can't land his furies, precisions, cruelties, your damage output goes out of the window. Now, even under all 4 of these circumstances, you can always bring in Cosmic Ghost Rider and you can somehow get through the fight. But the question is, why would you? Why do you want to do that? If you can bring in a champion that doesn't suffer as much from these restrictions, or doesn't suffer at all? And the answer is, you wouldn't. You don't use Cosmic Ghost Rider, or you shouldn't use Cosmic Ghost Rider for these fights. And that's why I think we're going to see where Hercules is significantly better. His only real problem is that he doesn't have proper immunities, besides immunity to stun. because the things that hinder Cosmic Ghost Rider's kit, and those are very, very, very common things in this game. Those are kind of like the standard go-to abilities that Kabam goes to. Cosmic Ghost Rider's real weakness, if you call it like that, would be that it doesn't have any specific immunities. But when you take a look at reliant on 5-hit combos, nope. You can spam heavy attacks entire fight if you want. You're still going to do a ton of damage because you're going to be activating his feat of strength. You can drop 2, 3, 4, 5-hit combos. You can combo however you want. Reliant on special attacks? No. Well, obviously special attacks deal damage and help you deal somewhat more damage. But if you have played Hercules, that, for instance, I used Hercules to take down last Alliance Quest series Magneto mini-bosses. And one of the nodes there is Polka Dot power, so I wasn't gaining any power. And it didn't matter. I was still dealing a ton of damage. And that is arguably one of the coolest things about Cosmic Ghost Rider. Sorry, about Hercules. But yeah, without special attacks, no problem. That's one of the reasons why Archangel is as great of a champion. Because, again, he just parry heavy, he does his thing. And besides opponents not being immune to bleed and poison, not many things that really hinder him. And obviously the Diva thing is he doesn't trigger buffs, he doesn't need special attacks, he doesn't need reliance on 5-hit combos. There are plenty of things that Archangel very easily, naturally works around with. That's one of the reasons, for instance, why Red Hulk is still as potent and great of a champion. Because he doesn't have buffs, debuffs, and he just gets on with the thing. He doesn't rely on any of these things that we're talking about here. Special attacks or debuffs or buffs or specific combo types. That is a very valuable thing to have. And again, reliant on debuffs, yes, well, he has access to like one debuff, which is the Infuriate. Which helps, but by no means destroys him as a champion if you don't have access to it. Unlike Cosmic Ghost Rider. If you can't stick an armor break, you are heavily, heavily disadvantaged. And the same thing with buffs, obviously. You can drop a special attack, you don't gain your buff. It's fine. It's not the biggest problem in the world. You'll still deal more than enough damage to finish off majority of the fights. So those are the main reasons why I personally, right now, prefer Hercules over Cosmic Ghost Rider. By quite significant margin, I must add. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to trash on Cosmic Ghost Rider. I have the champion, I enjoy the champion. Problem is that I can't use him too often. But more often than not, when I can't use CGR, I can use Hercules. But obviously there are still the full-on bleed and incinerate immunities, which is super useful. Cosmic Ghost Rider will be still better for a ton of power shield stuff. Cosmic Ghost Rider still has the ability to nullify, and there are several things that Cosmic Ghost Rider can do that Hercules cannot. But living with both of the champions day to day, I can definitely say that I find Hercules be benefiting my account significantly more than Cosmic Ghost Rider. Cosmic Ghost Rider most of the time is the fun option. So let's do quest quickly option. And so is Hercules, to be honest. But Hercules is also the champion that I can use more because he's less bothered by different nodes. So, long story short, I do personally believe that Hercules is better than Cosmic Ghost Rider, and at this point, I would be ready to put Hercules definitely somewhere in the top 3 Cosmic champion list. And I'm already seeing some keyboard warriors heading down to the comment section. It's like, yeah, but you said why the hype and stuff like that. And I'd still say that all over again. Because, let me repeat this. This entire channel and the way I approach this game is that I will do my own conclusions. I will listen to what other people have to say, but I will no means accept it as the final ultimate truth. And as of right now, the more I'm using Hercules, the more I am proving to myself that he is a very, very good champion. And he's growing on me more and more. And I am happier with him by the day. And yeah, so at this point, that's why I'm making this video. Because I have reached a consensus that I definitely prefer Hercules over Cosmic Ghost Rider by a significant margin. And these are the reasons why I do so. Keep in mind that this is my opinion. If you disagree with it, that is perfectly fine. My opinion is no more or no less valuable than that of your own. But I am trying to explain you how I think, why I think the way I do, and how I arrived to my conclusions. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. And if you did, well then, hit that like button, hit that sub button, hit all the buttons, and I'll catch you guys soon. See ya.